Hi, welcome back to Wednesday Night Drawing by Hand with New York Gold Tours. I'm Loretta Jones, CEO and founder. And last week we looked a little bit more at human migration and how it can possibly uh, still affect us in terms of our DNA experiences overriding um, what might be most recent in our ancestry. That which is most dominant might surpass. So, things in human migration, I don't know that it's possible that they can still affect us, but I believe it's worth looking at. It's worth um, considering that they might. And so, in terms of tonight's drawing by hand, we'll do a quick um, overlay of last week's drawing of Africa with a tracing on a blank piece of paper and last week's drawing. And we'll overlay the square and some of the meanings that can be attributed to the symbolism that we might find in our presence and that we believe we can perceive of ourselves that we examined in some of our previous weeks, Wednesday nights. And so we'll look a little further at human migration. So, what can we think of in terms of how it might be able to power us? How human migration, since it's a real thing, and we migrated from Africa, we all began in Africa, so we know we migrated. Some are still in Africa, of course. um, They may have migrated, they may have gone back. We don't know. I don't. Well, uh, I don't think Ancestry.com and those kind of DNA services trace back long enough to the human migration story. It would be interesting if they did, but they do give us our ancestry line. So if we look at human migration in terms of with resolve or closure, even, then we can see it as if we made a good choice in staying with our migration place that it brought us to, our ancestry line. If we've still lessons to learn, our neurological systems and body systems even can power us up for the tasks ahead. We just have to channel the energies, but they'll summon us forward. So for tonight's exercise, we'll need that piece of paper, last week's drawing, and you can gather the 4 colors if you have been using 4 colors or just one or whatever you've been using, and a pencil and or a pen, and we'll get started. Okay, so human migration and how it just might power us up. Once again, with something translucent, transparent, a hard service. Last week's drawing, so that we don't have to think about it. Even think about making a circle or sphere or the size and shape of Africa or anything like that. We can just trace it, thoughtless, and sometimes that's the best kind of work we can do. Frees us up for the creativity. Okay, so with this in hand, here we go. It's okay if it's a little off, and we can also perfect anything that was off last week. Okay, and the continent of Africa. Of course, I knew the continent of Europe and Italy, and all of those were separated by water, but I didn't sound as if I knew that last week. I don't know what I was referring to, but the things that threw me off that I was wondering about were Spain and Portugal, and those ones that are in a row there. I wasn't quite sure for a second if they were connected to the continent of Africa or not. But no, and as I was surprised to see, which I had seen in the past, but I guess I just never really paid attention to it, was that Egypt was on the continent of Africa and those others. But anyway, okay, so there we have it, and we have my continent over here where I am, and Manhattan where I am is a little off of the continent, and there I am. And so we can take and remember what we learned about the symbolism of a square, and take those 4 key points and just write them in. From that week's work. So today, what we'll do is try to draw some kind of symbolism of our own of what kind of power might be lent to us by this human migration fact of where we are today and where we definitely began in the large picture. And we'll end it with that, with drawing some kind of symbolism of that power, so you can start thinking about that. But in the meantime, we're going to write those 4 points. I'm going to use my pen. Those 4 points of symbolism of a square. So we have grounding, and we can write that below where we are on the continent. You don't have to write it below the continent, below right where you are. So grounding, stability, balance, and foundations. And then above, we can write those 4 qualities that we perceive of ourselves, that we put into the sunlight, into the sunshine that day. So mine were seeing, being, managing, delivering. If you weren't there for that, you can think of those now and just write them in. So I'm going to start with the closest, delivering, managing. What I mean by closest is that which is the bottom one being right above where I am, going up to the lightest. Being and seeing. And now, how can this power us up? This journey? We can get from it resolve by looking at our placement today. So we can write that along this. It doesn't have to be 4, but whatever we find, we can write here. I'm going to write it here. Resolve. We can have closure. We can have lessons to learn, so I'm going to put lessons. And our neuro and body systems power. I'm going to bullet them. And you can add any that you may think of. I'm going to go over my continent of Africa because I'm going to change the shape a little bit. Okay. I'm going to reverse a little bit. That's how the map, the World Atlas that I looked at last week had it. Okay. And with the 4 colors that we've been using, or 1 color, if you have, you can just underline or write over it so that you add color to this in terms of keeping the color key of what color is associated with what principle. And so stability I have in blue. Grounding I have in green. Foundations pink. And balance in yellow. I have seeing, yellow, being, and pink. Managing in green. And delivering in blue. Of the things that we wrote, we can attribute some of these colors, or we can just leave them. I think actually those can be new colors, so we can do that over the week. If we want, we can add whatever colors we see these as. We can attribute new colors to these that this human migration can power us with. And for tonight's drawing, we can draw what we believe the overall power that human migration can give us in a symbolic shape or power or visual, however we see it, however we can draw it. So think about that for a moment in terms of where your ancestry line left you, and contemplate if I tend to always think about the loss and how that can instill fear. If we see the loss of skin color or the loss of melatonin or melanin, it's a real factual loss, but there's also gains. There might be gains, and I just don't know, I don't know the gains. Maybe there's gains in I know there could be gains in stature or well, there could be lots of, I mean, it's all arguable. There could be lots of gains in intellect, in judgment, in perception, and lots of things that we get from journeying from one place to another and accomplishing that goal. And so there's lots of ways it could have powered us up. And when we looked at that tonight, we can see some of the ways. So, in surety, because that which was unknown becomes known. So that's one way that we could be more powerful, have become more powerful. But what is a way that it can continue to power us, that it can continue? Oh, and I was talking about it earlier in terms of if we feel like there's still lessons to be learned, our neuro and body systems will summon us forward. They'll energize to complete the work ahead when we know we still have tasks ahead. So, um, so I think in terms of maybe looking back, if we want to, well, that would be more lessons learned, right? Or that would be more to ascertain. So if we wanted to look back and see what was and see what is, those are, we can do scientific studies from that to decide what is gained, what is lost. So from that, we can find the multitudes of where power lies and where potentials are. If there are, if we believe that there's power to be gained from the knowledge and from the facts of what human migration will have brought us over our DNA over the years and over the just the actuals of us transcending down from that history. So I'm going to, for my drawing of symbolic strength or power that I believe I can get from this migrating to here, I'm going to draw like a crown over my segment of earth. And that's going to symbolize knowledge for me. But the fact of the migration, does it bring me knowledge? I'm more thinking in terms of knowing about the migration, but the fact of the migration brings me to some of those things that I have where I am, like the stability, the foundations, and I can translate those into those things that I perceive of myself, into managing, delivering. But so the knowledge will have been or can be the things that power me today, that can power me today if I believe that they can. This fact of human migration. Knowledge would apply to if I want to look at facts about Africa and weigh them with facts about where I am. So weighing facts. Okay, and this crown also stands to me for accomplishment. Successfully planting in this corner of the world where I am. So knowledge and accomplishment. And how else can that power me? Well, why would I use it as a crown? So brilliance. That which sparkles, which can be things that we know that make wonder and delight. That's something that we can think of as sparkling. Brilliance, that which sparkles and glimmers. For all to see. Like a crown that we wear to be evidenced. Okay. And so that's my symbolism. And I hope you all enjoy drawing what symbolism you see in your human migration story. You have one. We all migrated from Africa. And so if that means a reckoning with, your drawings might look different than mine. Well, your drawings will definitely look different than mine. Probably, I don't know. But because we're all different. Like snowflakes, we are. Okay, so we're similar but different. Similar but each to one's own, not to be replicated. Okay, so that concludes Wednesday night drawing by hand with me, Loretta Jones of New York Gold Tours, and I hope that you rejoin next week. 43 more subscribers until we can go live, and then I can get all of your opinions while we do this. Okay, thanks again. Have a great night.